How many times do we find ourselves in a position that we need to apologize? And I mean, I want to go grab this and go, okay, let me remember a few things from this book. Right?
I know. Hello and welcome back to the Journey We Share podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Kayleigh Antonucci, and today we are discussing a book that I'm so excited to talk about, and that is Why Won't You Apologize by Dr. Harriet Lerner. Mom,
yes.
Are you excited for this book?
I am. And this is really, really a good book. Like, didn't you say that if you were going to rate this book in one of your reviews, you'd give it 5 stars?
5 stars.
Okay.
On Goodreads, I rated it 5 stars.
That's a start. That's a start, people.
I love this book. However, this is what I will also say. There is going to be content that's in this book that could be slightly triggering. I think it's complicated and detailed. She does a really great job of expressing it throughout the book. But if any point in this podcast today, as we're talking about it, it opens up questions for you, I just want to remind you guys that our conversations are open. We don't want to have it just end here. So you can leave us a comment down below, let us know your thoughts, or if you're wanting a more personalized conversation or what you want to say is a little bit more private, you can always send us an email at hello@trochia.org. And I answer those emails, so I will get back to you.
Wonderful. Yes. Okay. So let me share a little bit about who she is. I thought it's very important because she's talking about apologizing. Who doesn't need some lessons on how to apologize?
Yikes.
I do.
Yep.
But this is a little bit about Dr. Lerner. It says she's one of the nation's most loved and respected relationship experts, renowned for her scholarly work on the psychology of women and family dynamics. Her 12 books include the New York Times bestselling The Dance of Anger, which has sold several million copies with more than 25 foreign translations, which I have not read that book. This is actually my first book. And the reason I picked it up, actually, someone recommended it to me, and Brene Brown gave it a thumbs up, and I love Brene Brown. And of course, apologizing. What an important topic. And so I have my book marked all over. I listened to it on Audible, and then I bought the physical copy so I can mark it. And this is one of those books that you just want to have on your shelf. It's my opinion, right? Because how many times do we find ourselves in a position that we need to apologize? And I mean, I want to go grab this and go, okay, let me remember a few things from this book. Right?
I know. I actually only listened to it on audio, but I took notes and wrote a couple quotes down because I loved it so much. I felt like she did such a great job of taking us along on a journey, which a lot of nonfiction books can kind of fall into two categories. They can either be all self-help, so like every single thing is a new task you have to accomplish, or it can fall a lot on like the theory side of it, which we've read a fair bit of theory books so far. And then we don't get a lot of the more like, what do we do now with this theory? So I feel like she did such a good job of actually giving us theory or information and then also telling us how to handle it, what to do, and even like kind of showing us her own journey within it, which was awesome.
Yes. You know, as always, when we read these books, we wish the author was sitting with us right here so we can have a dialogue with them. And so we're going to try to have a dialogue with Dr. Lerner as we talk about her book. But if you're listening and you want to share something, please reach out to us because we'd love to interview you because this is so good. But let me just start, I think, by her definition. She actually gives us a definition of what a good apology is. In fact, she talks about good apologies and bad apologies. So I'm going to go straight back to the part of the book, which is in page 33, where she talks about what the good enough apology is. She says it earlier too, but I want to just start here. I wondered if what your thoughts were on this sort of definition of what a good apology is. She said, it is actually quoting someone else. She's quoting John Cador, and she thinks it's a good definition. We apologize when we accept responsibility for an offense or grievance and express remorse in a direct, personal, and unambiguous manner, offering restitution and promising not to do it again.
Yeah.
I almost feel like I have to read that again. But we accept, this is all the parts of this sentence, I feel like she breaks down in the book. That's why I wanted to start with this, right? Because accepting responsibility for someone who has brought to us a grievance or an offense that we have done against them, expressing remorse, but not in a wishy-washy, mysterious way, like being very clear with our words in a direct, personal, and unambiguous manner, And then offering some sort of restitution. In one of her chapters, she talks about saying I'm sorry in a too short an matter, an apology that's just not enough, doesn't say enough. Offering restitution, that's number 2. And number 3, promising not to do it again. Like really saying, okay, what just happened? I don't want to repeat that.
Yeah.
Which I'm going to confess, so many of my apologies, after I read this book, I realized so many of my apologies are about getting rid of the discomfort of the moment. Mm-hmm. Like, what do I need to say?
Yeah.
So this conversation can end. Can we go back to normal?
Yeah, totally.
Right? Versus really thinking about, the gravitas of what I did. And how do I now make sure I don't do that again?
Yeah. I am so excited to bring to you my Christian reviews of regular books. My Christian reviews of regular books go over fiction books, and if a fellow believer may or may not want to be reading them, you can do so by heading to our YouTube channel and checking out all of the different reviews that I've done. Now, I read over 200 books a year, and that is so that I can give you the most amount of information possible so that you can decide if the book is right for you. Go ahead and check it out on our YouTube channel. I also think that a lot of apologies, and she talks about this on the bad apology side, but like a lot of times it goes to like, I'm sorry, but I'm sorry. And I'm sorry, however, which like just doesn't really give us the full context. So I love that she really kind of breaks down that definition of like, this is what an apology is in a way that's done well.
Yes.
One of the other things she does talk about too in the book, and really that definition shows that, is it's not an ask for forgiveness.
That's right.
Which I find so interesting. I've read one other book that really talked about we don't want to ask for forgiveness because then we're putting the onus onto the other person to like get us out of our own discomfort.
That's right.
Instead of taking ownership over their discomfort, our discomfort, the situation that happened. And so it's a really interesting dynamic on apologizing and just taking full ownership the whole time.
And she explained why, which I thought was beautiful. So if someone has been grieved by something we've done, and they have the power, the energy, the desire to tell us about it. Mm-hmm. So they tell us about what we've done, and we apologize. She talked about how there's a shift that happens in that person now. So all the energy has gone towards telling us what we have done wrong. Yeah. Like letting us know, hey, you've hurt me because of what you've done, etc. Well, when we apologize and we do a good and sincere apology, now they have to grieve what they experience.
Yeah.
Like you're not grieving when you're angry and you're thinking about how you're going to tell the other person, and that almost becomes a focus in itself, like how to address the fact that someone has hurt you. But once they apologize, you're now left with your emotions like disappointment, sadness, whatever the words might be, and you need to process that. And I realized, when we rush to ask someone, I apologize for doing that to you. I'm so sorry I did that to you. Would you forgive me? Mm-hmm. We're almost like jumping over their need to walk through what now kind of heal.
Yeah.
In which case, then they can be ready for to forgive us in their own time, in their own way. Yeah. When we rush them, it's like another injury almost. It can be, right?
Like they just have to get over it, right?
Yeah,
like there's almost this like, us. Okay, I said sorry, now move on. And we're all going to just pretend like that didn't happen, which it's so interesting to read about apologizing in such a detailed way as this book kind of provided. It reminds me, there was when my husband and I were first dating and we were like starting to do more of the life stuff together. So he'd come over on the weekend, we'd spend time together with the kids, like just trying to like understand what that looked like, and there was this one, I don't even remember what it was because a lot of times those arguments are also very short, right? Or they're not that big of a deal, but I just remember being frustrated. And I went to him and I was like, hey, I did not like how you did that. That really upset me. That frustrated me. And I was upset. Now I'm like, I don't know why, but I was upset in the moment. And he just immediately goes, you're right. I totally made a mistake. I'm so sorry. Mm-hmm. And I'm not kidding you. I just go, well, now what do I do? Like you so quickly took the balloon out of me, like in the best way that like, I don't have anything left to hold on to. Right. Which
now you're left with your feelings.
Yeah. Like I had dealt with a lot of relationships and especially with my ex-husband where it's like, I'd apologize. And then I would get that kind of I'd get, like him being upset back at me, or I would get kind of that, I'm sorry, but, like the defensiveness. And so I didn't get a lot of those just like, you're right, I made a mistake. And I just felt like, well, now okay, like I guess we can move on now, and so it was like such a beautiful lesson in like, oh, it can be that simple. Like, it doesn't have to hold defensive-ness. It doesn't have to hold a big issue. Like, we can just acknowledge, but it's hard for the apologizer sometimes, especially when you feel like I'm apologizing because I see I hurt you, but maybe what I did, I don't feel like was that big of a deal. Right? Yeah. Or it even sparks in you like something else. Maybe they say something else. She talks about this a lot. Maybe they say something else that then makes you feel like, why are you even coming at me? Now you made this comment. Now I'm defensive about this comment you made in the midst of your frustration. So it was really interesting.
When you were sharing that story with Anthony, I was thinking, it must be that when we come to talk to someone about a grievance, especially if we have not been heard, if someone hasn't accepted, like when we say, this hurt my feelings. If our feelings are a nuisance to others, a burden to others, or we've been made to believe that our emotions are too much or they're not allowed, and also we've got to tell someone, look, you've hurt me, and they say, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We came prepared for a battle because we've always had to battle for our emotions to be heard. And so there's like this screeching halt.
Yeah, 100%. That is exactly what it was.
I can picture that for you. So, wow, I totally get that.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. It was like, oh, that's the end.
We're done.
Okay, great. Thanks. And then yes, I could still process my emotions. I do what I needed to do. But I just remembered feeling so settled. Like, oh, it doesn't have to be more.
Yeah,
it can truly end at the, I'm upset. Okay, I apologize.
Yeah.
And that can be it. So would you read the definition of the bad apology?
Yes. Oh, before I do that, one other thing I thought that was really cool was it clearly shows that his apology to you was not too short, not too long.
Yeah.
Because one of the things she talks about is don't get wordy.
Yes.
The more words you add, the more people tune out.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's one of the bad apology things, which is when we say way too much, saying but. Like, I'm sorry, but, or I'm sorry if I made you feel that way, or I'm sorry if what I did triggered. So
I'm sorry you're feeling that way.
Yes, right? And so that if, she says, be really careful. The minute you say if, you start to shift away from your personal responsibility. So any kind of apology that doesn't hold personal responsibility. An apology is too short. That just says, I'm sorry, but you don't do anything about it. Like, I think she uses an example of someone spilling someone's coffee and they're like, oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
And then moving
I'm really
on.
Sorry. But the coffee's just spilled on the floor and you don't get up to do something about it. Like that's one of the bad. But she also has on page 176, a chapter called The Tragedy of a Failed Apology. And here she's talking about a story about someone going to a funeral, to a mother's funeral. And she received a terrible apology by someone. And it says this, tearful apologies, full of emotions, but empty of personal responsibility. Yeah. Like someone showing so much like emotional, oh, I'm so sorry, can't believe I did that, and a lot of shame.
Yeah.
But you can just tell that they're not really saying, hey, what I did was wrong.
Yeah.
That was selfish.
Not taking
But that was
ownership.
Insensitive. Yeah, there's a lack of, so it's just showing emotion isn't really an apology, I guess. Because the part of what the person was saying is like, you're throwing up all your grief on me. Mm-hmm. And I'm already hurt by what you did. It's also not my job to hold you emotionally or hold your grief.
Yeah. Well, she talks about that too at the beginning. I really loved that part. It's like the apology where the person who's wronged end up feeling responsible for the wrong party or for the apologizer's emotions and like situation. That is the worst feeling when you're like being told, hey, I'm sorry, but then they beat themselves up almost to the point that you're comforting them.
So I'm guilty.
Uh-oh.
Okay, a confession moment. I'm having a conversation with Chad, my son, and he was sharing with me a struggle that he was going through, and it triggered some of my personal, memories of the divorce, the things that he has gone through. And he's sharing his situation, which had, I would say, roots in the fact that he comes from a divorce situation, not once, but twice. Yeah. And so I could see how my personal decisions and choices were affecting his life. Mm-hmm. So I felt so sad as he was sharing what he was dealing with. And I said, I'm sorry. I said, Chad, I'm so sorry that the choices that I've made have affected you in this way. And then this is where I blew it. Then I went to, it just makes me so sad, that, I'm so embarrassed about my own story that I've been divorced twice. I made it all about me.
Oh, no.
I was so involved in my own emotions. I started talking about I'm just so embarrassed. I've been divorced twice and it's caused all this situation. I was on the phone, but if I were in person with him, physically, I could imagine myself looking away from him and just thinking about myself and completely leaving him standing there with his pain. Yeah. So when I read this, I realized, that was a really bad apology for him. I wasn't there for him in his situation. I was sort of, wallowing in my own shame and sorrow, which did affect him. And what I needed to do is say, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry you're going through that. Yeah. And that's more, it's not an apology. That's more of an empathy.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really an apology, but that's what I kept thinking about. It's even in empathy, sometimes we steal someone else's moment.
The one-upping on accident, even if it's not on purpose, right? Which is super hard. But I will say on that other side of the apology, where you kind of end up being the one expressing all this emotion, it's really challenging in that space. I've been on the receiving end of that, right? Where I'm upset and then I apologize and then I'm upset, they apologize. And then in the midst of their apology, they feel guilty, right? They're struggling with their own emotional discomfort, anxieties, upset, and then somehow it gets flipped shame, and then somehow they beat themselves up verbally, obviously, in front of me to the point that now I'm apologizing back. Now I feel bad that I expressed myself.
Yes.
Right? And so I definitely dealt with that a lot of times in a lot of different ways. There's really two ways to respond poorly to the person who is upset with you. It's either defensiveness or it's over emotion to the point that now you're making their emotions invalid. Yeah. Right. And so I think that it's hard. When you read this book, it's a very narrow path to the right apology, and everything else can kind of go one way or the other. I also think it opens up the door of that apology that happens where once you say you're sorry and you are okay, I want to do right, then what if the other person accepts it but is still hurt? Mm-hmm. Or what if you feel like both parties were wrong? You're apologizing because you realize you made a mistake, but you don't feel like you're the only one in the wrong there, right?
Yes.
So now maybe that person doesn't apologize. Maybe that person's okay, great, thanks. Then what?
Yeah. Well, she does talk about when you apologize, you take responsibility for whatever your part is and only what your part is. Yeah. And then you stop there. And yes, in fact, she even talks about people who don't apologize. Yeah. There's people who don't. And I actually highlighted some comments on that because I felt this kind of goes back to what you were sharing, how a person who then goes into shame and their own kind of beating themselves up, and it sort of stops the whole thing because now they're wallowing in their own thing. She talks about how it has to do with where that person is and what they're capable of handling as far as a self-reflection or a sense of who they are. Your sense of identity, your character, or your confidence in yourself affects your ability to receive someone's frustration with you or disappointment in you, and your ability to stand in that and not necessarily go down a spiral of I'm a terrible person. I keep doing this. I can't believe you're still with me because I've done this. And it's and the person who's trying to let you know what you've done all of a sudden feels oh, I can't say anything because I'm destroying this person every single time. Yeah. And how to do that, she explains, you have to know that some people don't have the capacity, or it becomes a defense mechanism to keep themselves from taking responsibility for their action, right?
Yeah.
And she says a lot of that has to do with familial patterns of ways in which in the family people would apologize or not apologize or take responsibility or not take responsibility. And so, yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah. It's a hard thing. And I also think it's really uncomfortable. You know, when you really break down apologizing, you are saying, I'm sorry, because you know you've made a mistake, right? Whether that mistake was intentional or not, which a lot of times they're not. A lot of times you're going about your life, you make a comment, that person hears that comment, they don't feel good, you know, or you guys are having a discussion, defensiveness builds up, which can happen so easily. There's so many little, I'd say, underlying triggers in our day-to-day communication, just truly across the board. And so it maybe wouldn't affect that person that way, but it affects you that way because of your own experiences. And so it's so hard to take ownership in that moment of, hey, I made a mistake and I need to do right and apologize and move on. And she talks a little bit about also when you feel like it's been too long and now you shouldn't apologize, like you're afraid to bring it back up. So she gives an example of one of her clients that it was a mom and a daughter. And
powerful.
Yes. And the daughter had been sexually assaulted by her dad. Yeah. And so the mom, you know, they worked through therapy, they did all these sort of things. The mom was very supportive of her daughter. But then as years went on, they went and saw a movie, and then this movie had to deal with sexual assault. And so it brought up what I'm sure was a lot of emotions in both parties, both the daughter and the mom. The mom felt responsible for picking the movie and taking her to it, but could not open up and say, I'm so sorry for doing that. I made a mistake. And I have to believe that brings up a lot of really hard emotions. And the reason why the mom felt she couldn't was because she was like, well, but what if she's not there? Yeah. What if she's not expressing that emotion? What if she's not feeling triggered by it? And so I don't want to bring her back there if I don't have to, right? So sometimes I think we don't apologize because we also think we are protecting the other person by like moving on. If I don't look at it, it's not there, you know? And instead of just sitting in our own discomfort and needing to do that apology for the other person.
Yeah, that story was so powerful. And one of the things that I saw in that story was the daughter felt, when they finally were able to talk about it, the daughter felt that by mom not bringing it up, she had to hold all the emotions herself. Yeah. Like she was left alone to manage all the emotions that movie brought up. Yeah. And so mom, knowing that the movie triggered her and not doing something about it, was pretty much saying, well, I know that triggered you, but you're on your own. Yeah. Not meaning to, but essentially that's what the daughter heard, right? Mm-hmm. Which was very, very painful. And so, yeah. And for example, if you're having a really good time with a friend and everything's going great, but you know you need to apologize for something you did, you feel like, well, if I bring that up right now, there goes our night. Yeah. You know, we were having such a good time.
It's like timing too, right?
The timing of it. So, but what I love about that story is there's a point at which where the daughter blows up at mom. Mm-hmm. And she, in fact, I think the Dr. Lerner calls this like that extraordinary, the most stunning apology I've ever witnessed, she said, which was so beautiful. And she says that when the daughter blew up at her mom, this is what the mom said. She said, I'm sorry, Kim. I'm so sorry I didn't know. I'm sorry I didn't protect you. Mind you, this is about the father having sexually abused her daughter. Yeah. Okay. I'm so sorry that this terrible thing happened in our family. I'm so sorry that you didn't feel safe enough to tell me the truth. And that moment was for them just this powerful moment. And, you know, as a mom saying, I'm so sorry I didn't protect you. Now, if she didn't know this was happening, how can she protect it? But what it does show is sometimes when a person is seeking an apology, they're not just seeking an apology for the event or what happened, but there's something that has been deeply broken in them that they need you to acknowledge. And for a child, you know, we look at our parents as the people who are supposed to protect us. Mm-hmm. So even though mom didn't know what dad was doing, there's still a sense of like, but you're my mom. Yeah. You're supposed to protect me. You were supposed to know. Somehow you should have known. Yeah. Right? And that the mom had the heart to apologize, even for something in this case that on the surface she wasn't responsible for. Yeah. But as a mother, and being a mother myself, like, I think that makes sense because, yes, I want to protect you. As your mom, I want to protect you.
Right.
So that was really, really powerful. And there's another chapter where she talks about not apologizing to people who don't want to hear from you. Mm-hmm. So on the one hand, here's an apology that lean in, even if it's uncomfortable in my room. But there's also a time when someone tells you, never call me again, don't talk to me again, get out of my life. But you feel like, but I have to apologize. Like maybe you do it once and then you're done. Yeah. You don't keep doing it. You don't keep pursuing that person. Then you're really rude.
You respect their boundaries.
Right.
Yeah. Which I do think a good apology, especially based on what she's saying, also does include boundaries from both parties.
Yeah.
From the apologizer, the boundary is apologizing and, also not taking on the hurt party's emotions in that process. It's setting a healthy boundary there. And the hurt party is setting the boundary of accepting that apology, but also being willing to say, thank you. And I want to set the boundary here and I don't want to communicate with you again, or I need time to heal, or I need time to work through it. And I hear you, but I'm still working through that process. Right. So I think a healthy apology and communication around that apology requires boundaries on both sides.
Yes. I apologized to a friend, a 10-year friendship that was so powerful. And I apologized to her because I really disappointed her. And I remember sitting on the front porch when we had this conversation. It's like, I just had it yesterday. And her response to my apology, I think I did it well. I don't remember what I said, but I don't think I did it poorly. She didn't give me any impression that I didn't apologize well. But here's what she said to me. She says, thank you, but I don't think I can get over what you did. And I think our relationship is forever damaged because of it. And I thought, what?
Yeah.
There's not a place where we can repair this?
Yeah.
And she said no. And so that was the end of our relationship.
Yeah.
And I mourned the loss of that relationship for many, many, many years.
Yeah.
But I had to respect her boundary. Now, we since have reconciled, not the same. Our relationship has never been the same, but we are, still in contact with one another, and we have good, we actually went on walks together, so we could be around each other well. But that deep, deep, deep friendship that we have is gone. Yeah. The actions that I took were so bad to her that it just completely destroyed her ability to have that contact with me.
Yeah.
And so respecting that was hard.
Yeah.
Because I was feeling left out and feeling like, wow, I don't think the punishment fits the crime in this case. I mean, at least on my side, I didn't think it did.
Yeah.
But, I'm sure it did for her. And it doesn't matter for her.
Yes.
It did.
Yeah.
And that's what mattered.
Yeah. And I think, that reminds me, I've had a few times in my life. It's not been that frequent, obviously. I think when you have that big of like a gap in a relationship, a friendship, right? That's a big one. But I think I've had two friends where they didn't forever damage the relationship, but they definitely said, I need space.
Yeah.
And I will let you know when I'm ready to re-enter that relationship. And both times were super hard. Yeah. Both times were painful and sad because they were people I loved and cared for. And I didn't want to have the disconnection from our friendship and our relationship. And I truly, now looking back, I was younger, obviously, but looking back, I can look at both those relationships too and be like, okay, I truly don't see that it would have been something that could have been irreparably damaged, but it was big enough for them that they needed space and time. And I love them enough to give them that respect. Yeah. On the opposite side, I did have to have that conversation with a friend that after multiple situations in which apologies were necessary and then boundaries continued to be broken or just disrespected, I had to have a conversation and say, hey, I love you. I am for you. But this is not working for me. And I don't want to continue this relationship like this because it keeps ending up back here again and again and again. And it hurts me. And maybe we just weren't meant to be this type of friend where we are in that kind of contact and maybe it looks different. And so then we didn't talk for 6 months. And then I honestly, this friend is the pursuer. So she probably reaches out to me once every few months and checks in. And I a handful of times can't respond. It depends on the situation. I'm very cautious because I feel like I've really had my feelings hurt, So I do think that it's a good awareness that sometimes there are things that happen that make a relationship irreparable, that really just require a boundary set that means moving on.
Yeah. And, so let's talk about marriage, because in the context of marriage, where your intention is to stay married for the rest of your life, and something pretty difficult happens. So there's a story in the book about a husband and a wife where he has an affair.
Yeah.
And that often will blow up the marriage. And so, but she chooses to forgive him. And that whole chapter was very interesting because Dr. Lerner talks about the fact that there is these forgiveness police out there who tell you, hey, you need to forgive that person.
Yeah.
You need to get over it. They've apologized. I've listened to their apology. It seemed very reasonable and very honest. So why aren't you forgiving them?
Yeah.
And she speaks about really very much against that. She speaks against, first of all, forcing someone to apologize, which is terrible. You don't want to force our kids to apologize. You don't want to force people to apologize. But also recognize that forgiveness is something we give in degrees. Like we can forgive someone to a point, and then we've got to grow to be able to forgive them further. And in this case, her husband asked her after therapy and everything, like, how much have you forgiven me? And she said 90%.
Yeah.
So I've forgiven you for the affair, but 10%, I can't forgive you for having sex with that woman in my bed, in our bed.
Yeah.
Now, they're still married and they were together, but she still was stuck with that part of the story. And, he was sad that there was still a portion that he wasn't forgiven for, but she was very honest. And Dr. Lerner said, hey, that's okay. There are times when forgiveness is going to take time or it's going to take a journey. And also she differentiates between forgiveness, which is truly a releasing of someone, and really forgetting, letting it go, not having the effect on us. But there's another layer to forgiveness, which has to do with our anger and our frustration. And she says, a lot of times people use the term forgiveness interchangeable for that. And those are actually two different things.
Yeah.
Letting go of our anger and our frustration is one aspect of forgiveness. And forgiveness, giving someone mercy for what they've done, is another. And I thought that was a really good distinction because I think people feel sometimes rushed to forgive, and they don't.
Yeah.
Like when I became a Christian, I wrote a letter to my dad and I forgave him for not being there for me when I was a kid. I wrote this beautiful letter, told him, and I thought, okay, I've been forgiven by Jesus, so I am now going to forgive my dad completely, and it's done.
Yeah.
And then I would say maybe 4 years later, he was dying of cancer, and I had an opportunity to see him. I hadn't seen him for 20 some years.
Yeah.
I had already written that letter. I thought, I have forgiven him.
I've moved on.
I'm done.
Yeah.
I put aside my anger and frustration, and I no longer judge him for what he's done. Yeah. And I went into the hospital room, and I stood at the foot of the bed and looked at him, and all those emotions came up again. And I thought, oh, I haven't forgiven this man. I thought I had, but I haven't. Yeah. And so that was my first time of really recognizing, because I became a Christian, Jesus forgave me. Okay, I should just forgive people and it's done. And that was not really an accurate reality to sometimes when we're deeply, deeply hurt, it takes time.
Yeah.
It's a journey.
Absolutely. Yeah. What I thought was so cool about this book is that at the end, she gives her own personal experience,
yes. And we both saw it differently.
We saw it so differently. But what I loved about it is so often I will read a nonfiction book by an expert or a doctor or something, right? And then at the end, they're giving these experiences in which almost basically says like, look, I'm perfect. I don't make mistakes. I don't mess up. And I felt like what we saw throughout that story was, no, I made a mistake too. And she did it twice over. So basically she gets in a disagreement with her friend, long story short. And the friend expresses frustration and her immediate response is defensiveness. She leaves the experience and the conversation with her friend, gives it a few days, and then realizes, oh, I need to apologize. So she does. However, she apologized with the hope that her friend would apologize back. And then her friend didn't. And so then that defensiveness and that frustration kind of reared back up again, where she felt like there were so many ways that could have gone, that this never would have happened. And she expresses throughout the end of the book about like, as I sat with it it and realize like that's not why we apologize. We don't apologize because we want an apology back. We don't apologize just so that we can move on. We apologize because we take ownership.
Yeah.
And I really felt like that was so helpful to me. And like looking at that is like, okay, this person who literally trains other people in how to apologize is also aware that she falls short at times. And that defensiveness can come up so fast and it kind of even catch you by surprise.
Yes. In fact, the book is so good. I mean, there are lots of great tips in this book about how to apologize well, how to apologize poorly. Very practical. She gives you so many different ways to understand the whole process of apology. So you think, oh, Dr. Lerner is got to be the expert at apologies. Yeah. She doesn't make any mistakes. And frankly, as I read the book, I thought she was. I thought, this woman has to be amazing at apologizing to people. And then here comes a story at the end of her struggling with her own apology. And so I was kind of disappointed.
Yeah, you struggled with it.
No, you told me there isn't an easy answer that I'm going to get this right. If I just follow the directions of your book, I'm never going to apologize poorly again. And in her, when she wrote the story of her apology, part of what, I think I called you, I was so angry or texted you, I don't know. But part of what bothered me was, okay, so she's an author and she went to her friend who had published a book and she was at her friend's party and she got caught up. She didn't know anybody, so she was caught up with one person in the party that she knew in conversation while the gathering took place. And she realized, oh, halfway through, she went and hung out with the gathering and her friend was hurt. Like, you came all the way here for my book release and you were busy with that person and you showed up halfway through the presentation and people wanted to meet you and you weren't present. I mean, so the friend's upset, right?
Yeah.
And she apologizes. But what was interesting is she said, I was blindsided. This was what made me frustrated. She was blindsided by her friend's frustration. And this is where I started to judge her. I was like, wait a minute, you're an author. You know how important it is when you publish your book. So I was like taking her friend's side.
Yeah, you did. You totally did. You were like, this is not right.
I was not happy with her. I was not happy with her. But I agree with you. In the end, once I calmed down, in the end, it does show that apologizing well and forgiving well is not something we're going to get perfectly. There isn't a one-on-one book of like, this is how you do it and it's going to be easy. Now you're never going to have a problem apologizing. Human beings are so complex. We have so much emotion, so much history, and it's a journey, not a destination. And so I appreciate, you're right, at the end of the day, after I was frustrated, I do appreciate that she shared this experience with us and kind of humanized herself for us so that we would see like, you're going to get it wrong sometimes, but try again.
I think that goes to just the fact of we are human. And so therefore we are innately flawed.
Yes.
Versus we have a good God who did forgive and continues to forgive every single one of our sins, right? Like we constantly fall short. We make mistakes. We do these things. And so what I actually really love truly about this book is that we're not pretending that any human is perfect, including the author of the book.
Yes.
But that she also is like, hey, I'm also in process and in progress, because the only perfect thing, as my daughters like to remind me quite regularly, is God and Jesus and that which they are like, involved in doing those things. And so I thought that was like really cool in the way that happened. I loved the kind of reminder. I also truly, like throughout this book, throughout the idea of apologizing and forgiveness, like she does touch quite a bit on forgiveness and that whole topic. I really appreciated this reminder of the fact that, God forgives our sins, forgave our sins, does it every single day, that no matter how many times we fall short, we are never far from him. We never have to be far from him. And that we can go to him and say, hey, I messed up, and that God's going to forgive us again and again and again to be in right relationship with him, which is a beautiful gift.
Absolutely. In fact, I think, remember we talked about the person who gets so caught up in shame and their own lack of self-esteem has a hard time receiving any kind of criticism or someone saying, hey, you hurt me. But when we are in Christ, this is, I think, one of the areas I've grown, that being in Christ and being forgiven by Christ and really understanding that it removes the power of shame over us and then allows us to be able to stand when someone is telling us, hey, you did something wrong.
Yeah.
And that affected me. And I need you to change. Or I need you to rethink your behavior or not do that again. And it's not about you being a flawed person. It does make you feel vulnerable when someone is telling you that. But at the same time, that vulnerability is undergirded by the presence of God and the love of God that's always there available to us.
Yeah.
And I think as Christians, we should be the best at receiving someone telling us, hey, you did something wrong, because we have that confidence in Christ.
Yeah.
I want to, in fact, finish us off with a verse from Romans chapter 12, where, again, we talked about Dr. Lerner isn't perfect at this. We're not going to have this down, but there's a lot of great tips in this book, and you want to check this out. But listen to what Paul tells us. What really is our posture towards finding that place of connection with others? And he says this: if possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Mm-hmm. So it's possible. Sometimes it isn't possible. And then as far as it depends on you, meaning as far as you can take it, you cannot control what someone else does. You cannot make someone else apologize. You cannot make someone else forgive you. But as far as it depends on you, you live at peace with everyone. I love that advice. I think that's a good place to go back again and again when we are struggling with an apology or with forgiveness.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're wanting to kind of take that next step, if you haven't read the book, I would highly recommend reading the book. We'll actually have it down in the description box for you, so you can click on the link and get it there, because it is so good and it's super short and easy to read. But also take a few minutes and kind of do a journal prompt where you spend time asking God who you may need to apologize for. Yeah. Maybe it's not something that happened recently. Maybe it's something that happened a while ago. So take a little bit of time and pray through that. And then if this is a person that's in your life that you can apologize to them. It may seem out of the blue. So maybe don't do it in the middle of a party, but it may seem out of the blue. It may feel a little bit funny, but it is so helpful when someone truly does stop and apologize, and even when you feel like maybe you've moved past it. So take that time. That would be our encouragement to you.
Yes. And keep in mind that some of us, I should say, have a lot of reason to apologize every day. So we don't have to look very...
Usually you should not have to worry about it.
The way you treated your spouse this morning or whatever, that little snide comment.
Yeah.
So whatever it is, just, look for an opportunity to practice apologizing. And I think... it's a good prompt for us.
Yeah.
So thank you, Kayleigh. This is so good.
I know, this was such a great conversation. I'm so glad that we got to have it. Honestly, I love this book, and I love that we got to talk about it on the podcast today. As always, we want to make sure that you're subscribe, and hit the bell so that you can stay up to date on everything that's happening here on YouTube. If you are watching us on YouTube, we also have the Christian reviews of regular books that come out 4 to 5 times a week. And we don't want you to miss any of them, so make sure to stay up to date on what's happening there. If you're watching us, actually, if you're listening to us on Spotify or on your podcasting platform, you can also find any information you need to stay in contact with us down in the description box down below. We cannot wait to see you on the next one. God bless you.